there's always something going on in politics, in our lives that's, worth of worrying.
If we don't plan ahead, we'll do what's easy. And switching on the TV and watching the news or reaching for a mobile phone is easy.
If it's big enough news, you will find out. People will tell you. And if you're trying to stay positive in these, challenging times, you can't bombard your mind, with all these negative messages all the time.
I guess I'm trying to do it, but make the whole activity pleasurable and something I look forward to, because that is an important part of that new mindset of the morning. Last week we spoke about morning routines. What are some of the hacks that might help people, and what are some of the setbacks that might be, or some of the pitfalls? How's your morning routine going?
I'll be honest, it's going really well, but it wasn't always the case, especially over the course of last month or two. I've been struggling. There were days that I could wake up any day, but I just chose not to. And then I tried to argue that the reason why on the days when I wouldn't adhere to, let's say, waking up at the same time, it would be that I'm exhausted on that day and I really need my body to recover. So on one hand, yes, I don't want to stick to the routine, but on the other hand, I'm trying to find the balance. So in a way, you could call it hypocrisy, because what we said last week is that, yes, stick to one routine and try to do it 365 days a year, which is fair enough, but, we're not machines, we're not robots, so we can't really adhere to that all the time. But I think that what you're asking is the aspect of hypocrisy, saying something but doing the opposite. And very often I think it's just a human thing. All of us tend to do that all the time. And it is hard. It's hard not to, because we all want to sound righteous and we all want to sound, super clever. But then when it comes to our own lives, we tend to forget about these things. So I don't necessarily think that we're doing it consciously, that we're doing it to be hypocrites. I think that it's just automatic behavior, that's the program that you've been running for so many years. So these programs, they're not easy to overwrite. So I think that's part of the problem.
So my morning routine, it's getting a bit better. I guess you had an established routine, or you were better with morning routines than I was. I think that's where we were. So my morning routine is improving. I'm getting up early. I'm getting up at 7:15. That's where I set my alarm. It's not where I want to be. I want to get up earlier than that. However, it's established now, and I wake up probably about 7 o'clock. I'm going to bed earlier. That's what's good. I've been exercising in the morning. I've been doing different stretches, looking at some different YouTube videos of stretching routines, kind of trying different ones out, seeing the ones I like, the ones that work for me, and kind of making a list of those so that those are in place and I can just go to them and make it a bit easier. That's something that really works for me. If it's too difficult, maybe I won't do it. What hasn't been fantastic is sometimes I've been waking up and I haven't been going back to sleep, but I've been going on my phone to do something probably legitimate, but it just steals the time. It really steals it. Like 50 minutes, an hour could go past easily. And if I wasn't on the phone, the stuff I could have got done in there would have been fantastic. And not only would it have been really good, it would have made me feel a lot better. Whereas I don't feel good about sitting on the phone for an hour. So yeah, the mornings, there's some definite positives. There's improvement going on there. And there's probably room for more improvement. So you're suggesting that you've got it all completely dialed in. Be honest. Don't be hypocritical. Is there anything that you think? Where's the areas where you're seeing a bit more potential for improvement?
Before I go into what you've just asked, I want to go back a little, because sure. I think this is exactly what we're supposed to go back to. Not having a phone is actually a part of our morning routine, and This is something I've learned a couple of years back. And I think that was one of the biggest things that had the most drastic impact on my mindset throughout the day. Because what happened in the past, I would wake up in the morning and I would check the news, and you start feeling this anger, this rage, this upset. It actually permeates into all the other aspects of your life. So a really important thing when it comes to every morning is to allow your mind to be only bombarded and filled with positive aspects. And after that, let's say after 8 o'clock in the morning, it's fine. You can read news, you can do whatever you want. I wouldn't advise it because, it's still going to mess you up. But ultimately, it helps enormously, in the way how you view the rest of the day.
Yeah, so a reiteration of some of the things that we said in the last time, or that you said actually, probably more than me. Planning ahead, really, really important. I guess that's why I'm going on the phone. Partly as well, it's maybe because my recreation of my mornings being about me a little bit of me time, a bit of recharging time. And so often we go to things that we think are easy, pleasurable, maybe like TV or something that's like easy for me to do, and the phone is so much a part of my life and probably lots of other people's lives. It's so easy to just pick it up and kind of spend a bit of time looking for something I want or whatever. And it's okay to do that at times, but I think at that time in the morning it's so detrimental because there's things that need to be achieved because that's what fuels me. And so because I'm looking to fuel up, you mentioning about the podcasts and something positive, and I think that's the other really important thing there is what can you meditate on that's going to give you fuel for your day rather than detract. So news
pulls your attention away.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. But how does it impact you for the rest of the day?
Well, I can tell you right away. If I'm going to give you an example, if I was to wake up in the morning and read about the number of deaths today, I'm going to start worrying about everything. And if I'm going to try to be productive, if I'm going to try to read a book after that, this thought in my mind, it's lingering there. And it's not allowing me to concentrate fully on what I'm doing because I always try to go back to that negative thing that's happening and how it may affect my life. I gave a really horrible example, number of deaths, but there's always something going on in politics, in our lives that, worth of worrying.
Absolutely. And we've said before, like if it's big enough news, if it's important enough, it'll filter through to you at some point in your day from the people you speak to or the things you come in contact with. So it's not really that much of an advantage to be meditating on that and fueling up on that first thing in the morning.
But that's a bad habit. That's the bad habit that most of us have. It's not that, we're any different than anyone else. This is the society we live in. We're expected to know this information. It's because, it's available and it's giving us reasons, or not reasons, it's giving us topics to talk to other people about because, just like us, most likely most of them are watching the same news. So, I could see why that could be a good thing from a social aspect because, at least you're not acting as an ignorant. But in my opinion, it's not really ignorance if you're doing it purposely. Like you said, if it's big enough news, you will find out. People will tell you. And if you're trying to stay positive in these, challenging times, you can't bombard your mind, with all these negative messages all the time because they will hit you anyway, if you want it or not. So it's not easy.
Changing is not an easy thing, and maybe it's a bit different for everybody because everybody's a bit different. What you and I are trying to do is explain the benefits of change and encourage people to be optimistic and to believe that they can change. I think that can be a really big catalyst in people changing. Having examples, seeing how it's working for somebody else, hearing how they did it, and then beginning to believe that they can do it too. Which is really interesting because sometimes advice on its own is just not enough. It's like, go fatty, go and lose some weight. It's like, well, okay. That's not all that motivating. Like, it could be motivating, You said it motivated you when you were overweight.
Initially, yeah. It's deeper than that.
Yes, yeah.
It goes way deeper.
I guess what I'm trying to scratch away at is if somebody shows you that something's possible, that can be an even better way to lead you to change. So you represent the mornings. You've done that. I've done it in the past, and it's slipped with me, and I'm changing. Partly because of thinking about it myself. There's a desire there already to change. Partly because there's somebody that's actually implemented that and is a model of change. Partly because I'm now addressing it and doing the work to do the change. And you really bring that out when you're talking about planning ahead for the next day. Because if we don't plan ahead, we'll do what's easy. And switching on the TV and watching the news or reaching for a mobile phone is easy. Those are the things that'll easily, those distractions will easily sabotage us, sabotage our change, our growth, our development, our establishment of routine. And so, yeah, I'm a bit challenged by that. So I'm going to be thinking more now about how I can avoid the pitfall of being distracted, of being sabotaged, avoid that pitfall by planning ahead of what I'm going to do with my time in the morning. It's my time. I've taken on that mindset. It's my time. There's time for me in there, but not time to just waste. It's got to be time where it fuels me, and one of the things that fuels me is achievement. So for you, doing the dishes in the morning and listening to something positive. For me, I've been stretching while reading. So I'm kind of like multitasking there. I'm trying that out.
Let me say something here.
Sure.
And for me, there's a reason why I read books in the morning. It's not only because I love to learn. The important aspect of reading books in the morning, it's helping me to train my concentration. And because these days, with access to internet, YouTube, social media, we're training ourselves, to be distracted all the time, and we're masters of it. But what that has such detrimental impact on our ability to concentrate on one thing for a prolonged period of time. So although on the face of it, yeah, he reads every day, but I'm doing it for a reason. So one thing is a mental workout, and the second thing is the ability to keep your attention at one task for a prolonged period of time. And I'm finding this to be absolutely crucial, for the rest of the day, because when I write notes and when I do my work, I'm finding to be the most productive if I switch off all the distractions and if I just laser focus on one task at the time, and let's say I'm going to dedicate 30 minutes, 45 minutes to do that thing. There are compromises, because during that time when, let's say, I'm writing notes or reports, I'm not able to answer phone calls, to check my emails. But because all these dings and dongs all the time, you can't really fully concentrate on one task at a time. Reading in the morning, it helps me to train that pattern. And then throughout the day, I got into habit of, putting my phone on silent and switching off sound on the computer. It annoys the hell out of so many people because, why are you not answering? It's like, it's me. What you've got your own agenda, which is probably very, very important. But if I'm gonna get distracted at this time, I'm never gonna focus. I'm never gonna prepare a good quality of work, because I'm gonna be all over the place. And you get to the point that you're busy, but ultimately you've not really done much work. And even if you've done some work, it's not really of a good quality, because we are not designed to be multitasking. Yet we can do it, but we can do it poorly. We're not able to do it, as efficiently as when we put our entire focus on one task at the time. So that's why I think the stretching, and for me, even listening to some sort of audiobook or something, washing dishes, it has an impact on. I can do two things at once, but it's not the same as either listening to the audiobook all by itself or by reading book all by itself. It just, sinks in more.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Well, I'm trying to listen to what you're saying, and because sometimes it's difficult with what we're doing here. Sometimes you're thinking about what am I going to say next, and so it's hard to listen. But I'm trying to listen. So it sounds like what you're saying to me is the reason. Well, one, I maybe made a bit of an assumption, or not an assumption, but an assertion that you might have disagreed with, is that I said so I'm reading for pleasure. So you advised how you're reading to increase your concentration, your focus. And the context of that is that you think multitasking might detract. So you don't want to, you think the stretching might detract from my concentration of the reading, but yet, slightly hypocritically, it doesn't distract you when you're doing the dishes to listen to the audiobook.
I did say that
it has
impact. I did say it has impact.
Okay. So I'm hearing you. That's all I want to say there is I'm hearing what you're saying, and I consider it. We all have slightly different goals. And I think let me explain what in my head the goal is, and that may change. So for me, my morning routine is in progress and it's not there yet. But where I want to get to, is I want to get up a lot earlier. So I want to move it back probably like an hour or two. I'd like to get up maybe 5:30. Yeah, 5:30 I think would be a good goal to get to. What I want to do, the stretching has a purpose. The stretching is about, I want to exercise in the morning, but I don't want to get damaged. And so that's what the stretching's about. So so what do I want to do? Okay. I want to stretch. I want to read. I want to do some very demanding physical activity that'll benefit my body for the rest of the day and get me to a much better level of fitness. I want to be creative. That's a huge one. My most creative time is in the morning. So I want to read, etc., but I want to write. I want to produce. So that's where I want to get to, and I'm not there yet. So what I'm trying to do is build the foundations for that. So the stretching and the reading are not the end goal for me. They are facilitators. Probably creativity is a harder thing for me to get to. That's where I want to get to. If I want to get rid of the distractions, I don't want to fulfill the tasks of the day. I want that to be my prime orb of meaning and fueling, because all of that is about fuel for the day, fuel for me as a person, what I want to achieve. Now that's going to differ from person to person. So it's not like I'm saying that's the routine for everybody. It's not. That's the kind of goal I'm aiming towards and the foundation I'm trying to build that. What about for you?
I think that by doing this, you're spreading yourself too thin. I think that the exercise should be a meditative task. When I exercise, I can't listen to the podcast. Because when I exercise, I'm giving 100%, everything I've got in me. And I have to be in that rage mode in a way. And I have to be completely dialed in. I have to focus on what I do. So when I exercise, I actually meditate on my body. When I do every single, press up, I focus intensely on my muscles and on everything else. I've tried to listen to audiobooks or to listen to audiobooks while exercising. It's not working out for me.
To be fair, the stretching for me isn't exercise. The exercise is a separate thing. So the purpose of the stretches is so that I can exercise and not injure myself. So when I do the exercise, I'm not going to be reading books. I'm not going to be listening to audiobooks. I'll be doing I'm aiming for maybe 20 minutes of intense exercise. So that point is just going to be that I'm going to do.
I don't think so.
Okay, tell me.
So, the way I see it is that when you stretch, you most likely have to be as much engaged in your stretching and listening to your body as with exercise. Why? Because if you want your stretching to be beneficial, you have to learn your body, you have to learn your limits. And you can't really do that when you distract yourself by listening to the book at the same time. There are certain limits of a range of motion. If you try to improve that, you can't just, lie down mindlessly and listen to something else and try to stretch. No, this has to be a conscious action, So when I stretch, I visualize, all my muscles, all my ligaments, stretching. And I try to learn, you usually stretch because you must be in pain or you try to avoid the pain. So when you're stretching, you're learning the biology of your physique. So that's why I think that listening to audiobook at the same time would be too destructive. You can do it, but that way you just do stretching for the sake of stretching, but you're not doing stretching, strategically. That's how I approach it. That's why I would, call it a meditating while exercising, whether it's stretching or whether it's, exercising. It's mind-body connection that I crave. And the moment you put the music on, or when you put the audiobook, you distract yourself from that. And this connection is not as strong as it can become.
Yeah, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it might be I adapt what I do, but to give a bit more of a perspective of what I'm doing. So in the past, I've done stretching, which is for the purpose of increasing flexibility and movement of joints. So I did mixed martial arts for a time when at university. And so there was lots of kicking and different stuff we were doing. So I needed to do lots of split exercises and different stuff that you'd hold for quite a fair amount of time. So it could be like 10, 20 minutes. You're sitting there and kind of in a state of stretching those muscles, whether it's like doing the splits against a wall or a couch or something. You kind of moved your chest in a bit close to it, and you're holding that. And so for me, that's the point where I'm able to read a book or do something like that. I do get your point, and it might be at those points where there is points where you can't read a book. It's kind of like, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to do it, but make the whole activity pleasurable and something I look forward to, because that is an important part of that new mindset of the morning. It's not all about work for me. I want to enjoy the morning. It's my time.
But stretching can be a little painful sometimes.
Sure.
And when that happens, you have to choose what you want to focus on. You want to focus on listening to the book, and then
yes, that's what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on the pain. I want to ignore the pain and just focus on something else. I guess that's what I'm using it for a bit as well.
Okay, but then again, if the pain is strong enough, then it distracts you from concentrating on listening. And then it feels to me like that's what I said when spreading yourself thin, that you're not really extracting from that audiobook as much as you would get otherwise, because you're being distracted. So that's why I don't like to combine these things, at once. And so it's just my take. And that's one of the things that, last week I sound a little bit like an ass when I was like, oh, this is the only way to do it because, that this is what I do. And what I neglected to recognize that we're all different. And many of us, have got jobs that require us to work night shifts, and they can't just say, oh, I don't want to do it. If you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, you've trained 5-7 years to become who you are, you can't just say, oh, I'm not doing night shifts. This is something I've neglected to take into account during our last conversation, and I think that today I would put it in a slightly different way.
And I guess values as well. So what's valuable to us and what we're trying to achieve by doing these things can change them a little bit as well.
And sometimes, when you're younger, you've got different goals. And clearly, your physical health, it's usually not at the top of your priorities. Because at that point, life hasn't beaten you up enough yet for you to have any difficulties at that point. But in your 30s, many of us start to rethink, our choices, our life choices. And even though perhaps your job is requiring of you to, let's say, do night shifts, usually around, the age of 30, 35, you start thinking to yourself, was that really decent a career choice on my part? Or perhaps I should rethink what I'm doing right now and decide how important it is for me to start looking after, my physical and mental health. So it's risk and reward ratio that's shifting, as we age and as we start prioritizing different things. Because, when you're in your 20s, who cares about, old life? You feel like you're going to live forever. And then when you hit 30s, you start realizing that we're all mortal. And at that point, you actually start your second life. And in that second life, that very often there are not second chances when it comes to your physical and mental health. So you better start addressing, these things quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think pick up a few injuries, maybe in your 20s or 30s, and be out of the game for a while, not be able to do sports or things that you enjoy doing. And that can be a real time to learn lessons of how valuable these things are and how mortal you are.
And physical health has enormous impact on your mental health. And over the last month and a half, when I completely changed the way I eat and I've implemented intermittent fasting to my life, I've noticed how everything shifted. How much more positive I am, how much more rested I am after waking up in the morning. And part of it is also to do with me going to sleep earlier. But this process is slow. Reshifting that, you said that you like to pull back your wake up time, down to, 5:30, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, which is great. But at the same time, you're going to have to sacrifice these couple of hours at night. And yeah, it's only hard at first. And I think that's the key takeaway from our today's discussion, that you can't implement change overnight. And these habits, they need time. And it's a conscious effort at first. And it's really, really hard at first. But 2-3 weeks down the line, it gets easier. It gets, more manageable once you start seeing, all these positive results of these new routines. And it is hard to explain things to people who've never experienced it. So as I said the other day, I wish I could give my body to someone who's not looking after their health. And I would like to give it to them for one day so they could understand what I mean. Because if you don't have a point of reference, or if the only point of reference you have is your sickly body that you're in, and it's really difficult to conceptualize, a better life, or that you can feel rejuvenated, that you can feel young again, because this is exactly how I feel. I don't feel like 36-year-old. I don't even know what that means. I feel just like I felt when I was 16, in my body and in my mind. And there were times in my life when I was drinking more than I perhaps should, when I was eating lots of processed and junk food. And I remember how I felt at that time. And it was horrible. My sleeping was so much worse. I couldn't concentrate as well. I've had a really negative self-image, and I was beating myself up, all the time because of all these choices that I've made. And I think this is a completely different discussion again. We're coming into the psychological aspect of implementing all these new routines. And what we don't want to do, we don't want other people to look at us and think, oh, they're so perfect, they're doing this and this and this. And they just make me feel really, really sad about myself because I can't adhere to any of these habits that they're talking about. But I was the same. I used to, lie on the couch, eat sausages 2 o'clock in the morning, and watch Netflix 5-6 hours a day. And it's all about your goal. It's all about, what is important to you, as you said earlier.
Thanks for listening in today. Change is a process. It's gradual. Sometimes it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But moving forward is really important, I think, for human beings. It's important for our mental health to feel that we're making progress. So, yeah, be encouraged that every positive choice that you make to improve things towards that meet with your values is a step forward. So yeah, just concentrate on those steps forward maybe.
If you enjoyed our today's show, please hit a like and consider subscribing. If you have any comments or any tips for us, they're always welcome. And yeah, thank you and see you again next week.